Sasori vs Deidara is a pretty interesting versus battle in the Naruto world because they are both in the Akatsuki, in the same very duo in the organization, and they are both artists with very different views on what art is supposed to be. So let's actually find out who would win an all-out confrontation between the two. But before that, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel to help me out, especially if you enjoy versus battles. Ring the notification bell if you always want to receive the videos when they come out as well. Deidara vs Sasori. The first thing I have to address when making this video is Deidara's statement when he tells Kakashi and Naruto that Sasori, his man Sasori, is actually stronger than him. Many people just say case closed when they hear that. There's nothing to argue about because Sasori is clearly stronger because Deidara says so. But this is just a very simplistic way to look at things. The first thing we have to understand is the situation when Deidara said that. Naruto and Kakashi were actually going to pursue Deidara because he collected Gaara's body. He was simply taunting Naruto to come after him so that Deidara could capture Naruto as well and bring the Nine Tails to the Akatsuki. At the same time, Chiyo and Sakura stood behind to fight Sasori. And Deidara knew that Kakashi was definitely the most dangerous ninja between him and Naruto. So that statement really seems to me as a way of Deidara telling Kakashi, oh, you should really go and help Sakura and Chiyo because they're not gonna be able to beat Sasori. He is stronger than me. Kakashi, you should probably go there. And he knew Naruto would not go back. He would pursue Deidara with Gaara, and that's why he was telling that to Kakashi in an attempt to make Kakashi not pursue him and actually go help Chiyo and Sakura. Now, do I think Sasori is fodder? Do I think Deidara doesn't think Sasori is strong at all? No, I don't think that, but we have to just look at the facts. Deidara was trying to make Kakashi go away so that Naruto would be pursuing him by himself, which would be a much easier capture for Deidara. Even if I couldn't debunk that statement, feats always supersede statements no matter what happens. And we can clearly see that through feats alone, Deidara's statement there is not terribly true. Sasori has access to hundreds of puppets. His strongest puppet is the Third Kazekage puppet, which he can use the Iron Sand with. It's a pretty powerful jutsu, but beginning of Shippuden, Sakura was actually doing very fine against it. Sure, she had a little bit of backup from Chiyo using her strings to make sure Sakura would dodge, but Chiyo only had one arm at that point, and her chakra strings weren't even that effective. Sakura was dodging the Iron Sand just fine. She also tricked Sasori into making the Third Kazekage puppet get into range so that she could punch it. And we can also see that one punch from Sakura was able to destroy the puppet entirely. As a matter of fact, every single time Sakura lands a punch on a Sasori puppet, regardless of the puppet, it is destroyed. She destroyed Hiruko with one punch, and Chiyo even said that Hiruko had reinforcements attached to it. It had a stronger armor and all that, and Sakura just punched through it just fine. She also one-shot the Third Kazekage puppet, which, as I said before, is Sasori's strongest puppet, and she one-shot every single puppet that Sasori threw against her when he summoned the 100 puppets. Every single time she touches a puppet, she one-shots it. So let's just say the puppets don't have an amazing durability. Also, Sakura was very much able to dodge everything Sasori threw against her. She got glazed a little bit here and there, which can be problematic because of the poison, and she did have the antidote, but she was doing just fine. The only time she got really badly hit by Sasori was when she actually protected Chiyo and used her own body as a shield, and then Sasori stabbed her with that sword. Sakura and Chiyo are not really speedsters, especially Sakura in the beginning of Shippuden. She doesn't have any impressive speed feats at all. For a point of comparison, Sakura just one arc after she fought Sasori was absolutely blitzed by beginning of Shippuden Sasuke alongside the entire team Kakashi. Sasuke would then absorb Orochimaru, become much faster and much stronger, and then fight Deidara, and Deidara was dodging Sasuke blitz attempts. So Sakura was blitzed by a guy that Deidara could react, and Sakura could dodge Sasori just fine. Do you see the comparison here. Her strength is pretty good. She can break the ground pretty well. She can also break that rock that was standing in the front of the cave that the Akatsuki was using to seal the one tail. But her damage potential isn't really that high. And even so, she can one-shot every single Sasori puppet. When we look at Deidara, we have to understand that this guy is a beast. People really don't give him that much credit in terms of taijutsu, but let me just list some of his taijutsu feats. Deidara kept up with Team Guy, arguably the strongest Konoha team, and by far the strongest Konoha team in regards to taijutsu, and not only he kept up with them, but he didn't have any of his arms, and he was using a kunai in his mouth to clash against Neji, Guy, and Lee. This is pretty insane. Deidara was out of chakra at that point, and he was able to do that with only a kunai in his mouth. This is not even his most impressive speed feat. His most impressive feats come from his fight against Sasuke. He is able to dodge blitz attempts by Sasuke twice. He is also able to outrun his own explosion, which is pretty insane. And we know that Hebi Sasuke is relative to Itachi. Itachi, who was relative to KCM1 Naruto, and I know that a lot of people will say that no, they were not relative because Naruto wasn't going all out, but Naruto had no reason not to speed up as fast as he could to dodge Itachi, and Itachi was also able to easily dodge B's attacks. And are you telling me that B was actually not going all out against him? That makes no sense whatsoever. We know that KCM1 dodged the 4th Raikage, which is pretty impressive because the 4th Raikage was the fastest shinobi alive at the beginning of Shippuden. Sasuke is a very fast shinobi, much faster than Sasori, much faster than Sakura, which was able to dodge most of the things Sasori was throwing against her. So I have no doubt in my mind that Deidara would be able to dodge Sasori's attacks very easily. When Deidara was fighting Gaara, he was dodging essentially the entire desert on top of that bird. And we know Gaara-san can be very quick. In the 5 Kage Summit, for example, Gaara-san was able to block an attack by a fully powered 4th Raikage, which, as I said before, is the fastest shinobi alive in the beginning of Shippuden. And Deidara was just casually avoiding that sand all night long. The only attack he gets hit by, he uses that opportunity to implant some of his clay bombs into the sand to attack Gaara from within his shield, which is pretty clever. And yeah, Deidara is a pretty clever fighter. Sasori definitely has more knowledge about the ninja world, especially because he's much older as well, but Deidara has a pretty decent battle IQ. And he would definitely know that Sasori's most dangerous thing is his poison, which Deidara would be able to dodge, and if he throws a cloud of poison against Deidara, he can do the same thing Sakura did and exploded away. Let's be real here, if Sakura was able to destroy every single puppet she touched with a punch, and we see that her punch can destroy a rock, a big rock, and open a small crater on the ground, Deidara's explosions hit much harder than Sakura's punches. His basic explosions would be enough to destroy any puppet Sasori had. Well, let's just say if Deidara flies up and throws his C1, which yielded an explosion equivalent to a tail beast bomb, he is one-shotting every single puppet Sasori has out, including Sasori himself. He's going to destroy Sasori and Sasori's living core, ending the fight. If he wants to be mean about it, he can use C2 Dragon, which can spit out bombs non-stop that can explode very hard. And any of those explosions would be able to one-shot any of Sasori's puppets. Deidara would be able to dodge the Iron Sand, because we've seen him dodging Gaara's Sand, which I would argue is faster than the Iron Sand, especially after seeing what he did against Deidara himself, and how Sasori was doing against Sakura using the Iron Sand. There's really no comparison here. Gaara was also using 100 times more sand than Sasori was when he was using the Kazekage puppet, so I really think that Gaara's sand is much more powerful than the puppet sand anyway, so Deidara has already dodged plenty of sand during his time, he would be able to dodge the iron sands, especially if Sakura did it. He would then toss explosives and destroy any puppets that Sasori throws against him. When Deidara comes back in the war arc, he was relative to Ohnoki, which is the strongest Kage, and we see that very clearly when they fought against Madara, that Ohnoki was essentially carrying that battle the entire time, and Edo Tensei Deidara was relative to him, which is another very impressive feat. In that same fight against Ohnoki, Deidara was able to capsize the entire Turtle Island with a pretty casual explosion, which speaks volumes about Deidara's firepower. Sasori doesn't have anything remotely close to that. Also, if you like to use a lot of things as your basis to cover versus battles, you can also pick from the video game stuff, where when there's that cutscene that Conan stomps Sasori and makes him come into the Akatsuki, and Conan is not really the strongest Akatsuki member. She didn't use her paper bomb ocean to defeat Sasori, which is definitely her strongest jutsu. She just used her papers and all that, and Sasori lost to her. I don't know if that's even canon, but if it is canon, yeah, that doesn't really bode well for him. And we saw how Deidara was recruited into the Akatsuki. He lost a fight to Itachi, which I have to say is much more forgivable than losing to Conan, but it's just me, you know, I don't know, take your pick. Itachi, Conan, who's the better fighter? In the end of the day, Deidara is taking this fight mid-difficulty. The only problem he may encounter in the fight is Sasori's poison, which, to be fair, if Sasori somehow hits Deidara with his poison, he wins. But I don't really see that happening very often. Out of 100 battles, maybe he does that in like 3, 4, maybe 5. Under normal circumstances, the most likely winner is Deidara. Mid-difficulty, if we assume they start off on the ground. If we assume that Deidara is already flying, then he can just drop a C1 bomb and it's GG, no diff. Watch this other very interesting versus battle right here. Leave it in the comments below, what do you think? Subscribe to this channel and to my second channel too, link in the description below. And like this video too if you enjoy versus battles. Thanks for watching.